Oh, wait, no, not yet, not yet, not yet. Hello, I'm so glad you're here with us. Today, we're going to be doing part 3 of our Resilience Tools for Parents series. My name is Beni Garcia. I work here at Polara Health. And today's topic is self-care is not a luxury. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, you're going to see why it's not. And maybe you'll also leave with some ideas, maybe even just one idea. In fact, if all you get is one idea of something that you can do for yourself, I consider that a win, because those small little steps actually are sometimes the most powerful ones. So today's presentation and all of this whole series on resilience tools for parents, it's brought to us by the Crisis Response Network through a grant by SAMHSA to provide mental health tools and support through this global pandemic that doesn't seem to end. So it just keeps going. And so because of this global pandemic, we are all experiencing higher levels of stress. It kind of sneaks in. And so that's what these videos are meant to maybe give you some tools, equip you just a little bit more to kind of help you through this time and beyond. Maybe you'll even watch this after it's all said and done and you'll go, oh man, I'm glad that's over. But there's still some good stuff in here. So I'm glad you're here. So let's get going. Let's jump into this. So if you were here in person, I would ask you this question. I would say, what activity do you do daily that calms you? And just kind of maybe take a deep breath and think about, is there anything that you do every day? Is it just that one cup of coffee that you make and you just kind of take a moment to smell it and enjoy it? Is it when you walk your pet? Do you have a pet that you walk? Is that something that helps you calm down? What is it? Just think about that for a second. So one way of looking at resilience is by using the image of a scale. So we have here a little scale. So in the middle, right here, we call this the fulcrum. That's the vocabulary word. And the fulcrum, when we're talking about resiliency, is the parts of you that don't change, right? So it's like your genetics, your past experiences, your personality. There's parts of you that just are who you are. But on either side of the scale are the things in our lives that do change. Okay, on one side, we might have hard things or stressors. On the other side, and in that, it's anything in your life that takes any part of your reserves, right? It could be medical conditions, it could be financial, it could be transportation issues, family issues, children's behaviors, substance use issues, neighbors, school, work. Hope I'm not stressing you out, but all of those things. And if it's taking from you, from your reserves, we would put it in one side of our scale. So resilience occurs if we have enough good things or resources to balance out that hard stuff, right? So on this side, we're going to have our good things. It's the stuff that brings us breath, fills our cup again, and helps us to balance out the stuff. Because the truth is, we're not going to have life without stressors. That's just impossible. It would be unreasonable for us to think otherwise. But so it's how do we balance? Do we have enough good things in our life to help balance these things out? And I guess I should use the words good and bad. I should take those words out because it's not about judgment. It's just about the things that give us life, the things that take our reserves. So what are some good things that actually help you stay balanced? Some things that you might put in here if we were to use this as a worksheet, or if you had a piece of paper and you were going to fill this out yourself, you could write things like, maybe there's family members. Maybe there are family members that bring you life. Maybe there's friends, right? Maybe there's, maybe you have some kind of a spiritual practice or a faith that you engage in. How about a reliable car? We don't realize how wonderful that reliable car is until it's not reliable. And then it goes on this side. A good doctor, access to food, shelter, all these things are good things, right? So here's a really important part is if you have more hard things than resources for too long or for too intense a time, this is going to affect your stress response. Or what I mean by that is going to affect the way your stress or the way your body handles stress. It's going to literally affect that. And we're going to talk about that here in a minute. In fact, it can actually literally change your regulatory networks in your brain. What that means is the parts of your brain that help you stay regulated can change and be affected. So let's talk a little bit about that. Let's look at the science part of that. So we're gonna use this as like a little worksheet. And so what we're looking at here is like our stress response, right? So on the bottom, we're not really stressed. This is what we hope our baseline will be. We're nice and calm and reflective, right? The next layer, when we get a little bit of stress hormone in our body, then we're at flock, alert, or avoid. Okay, so what that means is if you hear a big noise, you usually look at the person next to you and you go, did you hear that? Right, that's flock. Or you're alert. You're like, wait, what was that? Or you might be avoidant, like, I'm gonna ignore that. Because that's how I'm gonna deal with this moment, right? You get a little bit more stress hormone and now you're in freeze. You're like, okay, what am I gonna do next? Right, you're like that deer in headlights. You could also be an alarm. Okay, this is not good. I'm alarmed. I need to be aware. I need to make a plan. Or you might actually go a different direction. When you have that much stress, you might just say, okay, whatever needs to happen, if you say anything, I'm gonna say yes. Just anything to get me to feel safe. Okay. If you get even more stress, you're going to get into that flight, like, I gotta get out of here. You might start to run, or you might just feel even more and more fear. You might just even dissociate even more. And at the very, very top, at the top where you just couldn't even excrete any more stress hormone in your body, you're going to be in fight, or you're terrorized, or you might even faint. Okay, so these are just vocabulary words on the left-hand side to describe what could be happening as your stress hormones in your body go up. Okay, they're physiological responses. And that's a key. It's really important for us to remember, because sometimes we're like, why did I act like that? Well, it was physiologically appropriate. If you have that much stress hormone surging through your body, you have these predictable things that happen. See, as your stress goes up, your brain function literally kind of goes down. So you might have the ability to think very clearly. You might have a lot of wisdom. You might have so many wonderful strategies. You might be a very patient human being. Okay, and all of that lives, up here in these higher parts of our brain. As stress hormone surges up and up and up, we have less and less and less access to all those higher order skills. So it's not that you don't have them, it's that you don't have access to them. Think of it the way you would think of if you had too many glasses of wine. If you have too many glasses of wine, hey, I know that you most likely have a pretty good access to your ability usually to walk in a straight line, to talk clearly and not slur, to think in a logical way. But the more of that wine is surging through your body, the less access you have to those things. Stress is the same way. The other thing that's important to know about stress is that just like it takes time for the body to metabolize that wine so that you're at a nice sober state, it's the same thing with stress. It takes time to sober up from that stress response until we get nice and down to calm and reflective. It takes time to metabolize it. And that's really important for us to understand and know. So I want to show you, I'm going to wow you with my drawing skills. So bear with me here. So I'm going to draw a couple lines here. So the first line I'm going to draw is a neurotypical response to stress. Okay. This is a very neurotypical line. And let me tell you what I mean. So if you respond like most people, you haven't had so much stress in your life that you're sensitized, and we'll talk more about that later. A normal stress response often looks like this. So we understand what all these words mean on the left. Now on the bottom, we're going to call this just baseline. Okay, I'm going to call this base. Then this next, we're going to call that like a stressor. And then on the third one, we're going to call it extreme stress. Okay, so here we go, extreme stress. All right. Ooh, oh, I hope that doesn't bother you. That's probably going to bother you. It'll bother me that it's not straight. Let's see if I can make that a little bit. Okay, hopefully it's good enough for now. So neurotypically, what happens is that at base, we're usually here at reflective, calm, or kind of alert. Alert's not a bad place to be. In fact, when we're in school, we want to be alert, right? We want to have a little bit of stress hormone so that we can pick up what the teacher's putting down. So these are really common places for us to be at base. Now, a stressor happens. So a big noise, for example, happens. And it's very, very normal, biologically correct for more stress hormone to go into our bodies because it helps mobilize us, right? So then what's really normal when you're in a stressful situation is you go up in your stress hormone. So you might be at alarm, you might even be at fear, depending on how much stress is going on there. And now if that stress turns into extreme stress, like that big noise keeps happening or it gets closer to you, now you need more of that stress hormone to help mobilize you and maybe get out of there. That's a great use of our stress hormone to help us, because when we have that much stress hormone, we're often faster than we usually are. We're stronger than we usually are. So it really comes with these benefits. Stress does. Right? So this is a neurotypical response. Okay, now here's where my drawing skills are going to wow you the most, because now I'm going to freehand this. So bear with me. When I talk about how we need to metabolize the stress so that we can get back to baseline, I've heard some professors and some scientists say that depending on the stress response or how big the stressor was, and the person's own responses, it can often take between 8 and 30 hours to fully metabolize a large amount of stress. And it could take more. This is just an average. Okay, that's a long time. But so what happens is that you get this big stressor and you get this surge, and I hope you can see me. You get this surge in stress hormone. And then your body's like, okay, metabolize. But then something else happens, right? Something else happens, and then more stress hormone gets released. And now you're metabolize. And then another stressor, up. And now you're trying to metabolize. If this keeps happening, we call that toxic stress. What happens is that we never get back to baseline. And so the body says, okay, you're not going to get back to base. Let's make you a new base so that you can get there. And so instead of being nice and calm and reflective at base, your body creates a new baseline. Boom. And now at base, you're alert. What does that mean? That means that when you're finally at the end of the day trying to relax, you hear a noise and you're like, what was that? Like you become more jumpy, right? You might actually recognize that as like a form of PTSD. And it kind of is. But it can happen to people just because of the amount of stressors, and you never have a chance to get back to base. Okay, what we call that is being sensitized, and our children can be sensitized. You can be sensitized. The more unpredictable stressors that we never know when it's going to go away, we never know when it's going to come. This is a recipe for being sensitized. And so let me show you what that looks like on this graph. And so here's where I have a real hard time making this arc. So just imagine this half circle. Here it is. Okay, this is not perfect, so bear with me, and you can kind of follow me a little bit. So at baseline, you can be anywhere in any one of these high levels of stress, depending on how sensitized you are. Okay, and then one little, like for real, like not for real, but a stressor happens, you interpret it as a regular stressor, and you're already off the charts, right? And you understand that this is a continuum, right? Some people, it may not be way up here, it could be down here. People are at different levels of sensitization. You understand what I'm saying? So, and this is really important to understand. Why? Because, even if you're at the store and maybe something happens, you get a very disgruntled person yelling at the cash register person, at the person at the cash register. They're doing the best that they can. But this person who just lost it for something very seemingly small is probably extremely sensitized. They don't consciously want to be the way that they are, but physiologically can't help the amount of stress hormones surging through the body. And when you're there, it has very, very concrete effect on your body and on your functioning. And if we're not aware of it, if we don't have tools, and if we don't practice things to try to help us through this time, we're at its mercy. We're at the mercy of the stress hormone that's surging through the body. So I hope that kind of gives you a little bit of, maybe even a little bit of grace of, even for yourself, right? Sometimes you're like, snap at your children. You're like, why did I do that? I didn't mean to act like that. Well, I'll tell you why. This is why. How much stress have you been handling? How have you been able to have times to help you metabolize that stress? What are you doing to help you get back to baseline? Do you even have time for that? Can you make time? Now, there is an opposite, right? And the opposite is resilience. We call it a resilience line, right? And so the resilience line looks a little bit more like this, right? And how do we get to resilience? Well, we get to resilience by taking care of ourselves, by having predictable, moderate, and controllable types of stress. So waking up in the morning is kind of like a predictable, moderate, controllable type of stress, right? I mean, it's something we got to do every day. It's a little bit stressful. We know it's coming. We know what we can do about it. So the more we can provide predictable, moderate, controllable forms of stress for our children, the better. So letting them know what's coming up so that they can be prepared for it. Letting them know what they can do if it becomes too much for them. Right? We're gonna go visit family. Now, if you get a little bit tired, you just tell your mama and I'll make you a little place where you can take a little rest. Okay, you just tell me. Like, that's an example of how to make a situation a little bit more controllable for the child. The child feels like they have a little bit of control over the amount of stress. Same thing at school. Try to take these concepts. All right. So now that we have a little bit, let me see if I've missed anything. We have a little bit of a understanding of this. And here, let me give you another example too of how this kind of works. So if you are at regular, we call this straight line in the middle, that neurotypical place, and your baby starts to cry, you might get a little bit of stress, right? And you go, okay, I need to go pick her up. I need to maybe make her a bottle, or I need to get his diaper changed or whatever. Right? If you're resilient, if you're in a resilient state because you have all these other forms to take care of yourself, you might say, oh, this is an opportunity for me to bond, or you might get really creative or whatever. But if you're in a sensitized place, why are they crying again? What's going on? Right? And you might even feel guilty for even thinking that way. Well, we got to put that guilt aside. There's a reason why you're feeling this way. And that's why you're here. That's why you want to come to this webinar today, because what we're going to talk about for the rest of today are what are things that we can do that are within our power and our control to try to help us get to that baseline faster? What are some proactive things that we can do so that we can create a more resilient stress response? Okay, so, I got to clear this before we can move forward. So we're going to clear that, and here we go. So self-care is medicine for those regulatory networks. It's medicine. And now hopefully from that, what we just talked about, that kind of even maybe you understand this in a different way. It will literally help that stress response be less trigger happy, like get you closer to calm so that we can deal with life. So one of the things that that we can do is to create a self-care plan. Now here's my disclaimer. If you're like, I don't have any energy to create a plan, okay, then don't do it. All right, I'm gonna give you some tools and some tips to do this. And if you have it in you to work on this and do this, do it. If you don't, just keep listening and see what you can do. What does seem reasonable for you? Write that down and commit to that. And then maybe in a month, maybe in a few weeks, you might want to watch this again and see, okay, maybe let me try something else. Okay. So studies show that if you create a plan with like concrete, like obtainable goals, that you're going to be more likely to get results than if you just say you want to do something. Okay. So that's why sometimes making a concrete plan and writing it down can be really helpful. Okay. And so if you want to try to do this, here are some resources. Okay, I'm going to give you some resources here. So the step one is just take stock, right? Just kind of, maybe use an assessment tool. And I'm going to give you a resource for that. You could ask some trusted friends or family, hey, do you feel like I've been stressed out lately? And they might go, oh, yeah, think. They might say that, right? And they might be able to give you some feedback as when they notice that you have the most stress, because sometimes we don't see ourselves. So asking people, using assessment tools, these are really good ways to just take stock. What's going on for you? And then you can go from there and kind of brainstorm some ideas. Right. And then from there, you can create the plan. And I'm going to give you some, and in fact, here. So when you create the plan, you're going to write down some of your priorities. And again, I'm going to give you some tools for this. And then from there, you're going to choose maybe 1 or 2 ideas or activities to try. Don't do a whole bunch. You do a whole bunch, you're probably not going to go through with it. 1 is really optimal, maybe 2. And then check in with yourself periodically. Okay, so once you create this plan, hang it up somewhere, right? Like I have a plan hanging up in my bathroom mirror so that it kind of every once in a while it catches my eye. I'm like, oh yeah. Right. And so here we go. So this is what you see on your screen is an example of one of the self-care assessment tools. And this one is actually available on Therapist Aid. So I know that you're on a video, so you can actually stop this if you want. And you can just Google Therapist Aid. It's a website, therapistaid.com. And then once you get there, you can just plug in self-care assessment. It'll pop right up. It's completely free. Okay, this is the actual URL for it. But I think it would probably be best if you just go to therapistaid.com and then search self-care assessment. It'll pop right up for you. I can't remember how many pages. It's probably 3 or 4 pages long. Really simple way to take stock. Okay. Black Dog Institute is a wonderful website. They originate from Australia, and they have a wonderful, colorful self-care plan that it just guides you right through it. It's a beautiful plan. It's really easy to use. It's a nice one. Again, I would encourage you just to go to blackdoginstitute.org.au because they're in Australia. Okay, and that'll take you to their website. Then if you want to go to the resource that I'm talking about, just do a search for, and you can kind of see it right here, self-care plan for healthcare workers. You don't have to be a healthcare worker to appreciate this plan. It's a great plan. Okay, so that's the second one. Brown University also has one. They're a more stripped down version. It's not as pretty as the one on Black Dog Institute, but it's a very good one as well. And I like to put lots of different resources because everyone's different. What speaks to you might not speak to someone else. So I want to put it all out there. You check it out and see the one that works the best for you. This is a pretty long URL. So what I would encourage you to do is you could go to brown.edu and then do a search for self-care assessment or self-care assessment and planning. And it's a PDF that'll pop up for you. The last thing that you can do is that if none of it, like if you have a real hard time trying to find these things, what you could do is you could email me. I don't mind this at all. Just email me and I will email you back with the links. Okay. And so mine is B for Beni, B.Garcia, Garcia, and I'm at Polara Health. And Polara is Polara Health, all one word, .com. Okay. All right. So those are some ideas for just taking stock, right? And what a lot of these tools are going to guide you through are different dimensions of our life, right? There's physical self-care, there's psychological, emotional self-care, so on and so forth. So right now, what we're going to do is we're going to take a couple minutes to go through quickly some things in those areas and see what pops up, see what kind of resonates with you. So when we're looking at our physical self-care dimension, here's some things that these guides might help make you think about. How's your diet? How are you eating? You eating healthy, nourishing foods? How's your personal hygiene? Well, just basic. Sometimes when I'm depressed, I don't brush my hair as often on the weekend, right? That doesn't happen very often, but it is an indicator of where I'm at in my own self-care and my own where I'm at. And it's a little red flag to say, hey, Beni, you need to take care of yourself. Be nice to you, right? We want you to have that voice inside. Be nice to you. How's your exercise? Are you getting some good physical activity in? How about, do you wear clothes that makes you feel good about yourself? That's something to try. Eating regularly. So even if you are eating good food, are you eating enough of it? Or too much of it, right? So it's always a balance. Are you participating in fun activities like walking, swimming, dancing, sports? Are you getting enough sleep? How's your sleep life? If you're having a time, maybe try to think about some things you can do to help your sleep hygiene. And if anything you do isn't working, talk to your doctor. It's that important. Are you going to your regular preventive medical appointments? Ugh, I don't like doing that either. But when we do that, we can, it's really worth it. It can really prevent some major things down the pike, and it can really help us. It can catch things. And are we taking care of ourselves when we don't feel good? Or are we just trying to push through? And sometimes we push through because we feel like there is no other choice. Sometimes we take a moment to think, gosh, is there another choice? Is there anybody that could maybe help me? All right, let's look at a different dimension. Physiological or emotional self-care. Here's some things to consider. So do you take time off from work or school or whatever your main thing is? Like if you're a stay-at-home mama, do you get to have breaks from that? Right? It's really important. Our bodies and our brains are built for balance. Anytime we do too much of anything, it throws us off, and we can have physiological and psychological effects. So we gotta have balance. Do we participate in hobbies? Do we get away from distractions like phone and email? Do we kind of like, create a little system around that so that it doesn't rule your life? Do we learn new things? Do we even just take the time to just take a class in something that's completely unrelated to your normal life? How about expressing your feelings? Is that hard? Is that easy? Do you talk to people? Do you express your feelings through art or journaling? How about recognizing your own strengths and achievements? Sometimes we don't even realize how much we have done. Like how much love that you pour into your children. Like sometimes we got to sit back and go, you know what? I'm doing okay. Like I really did well in that area. Go on vacations or day trips. Do you do things that are comforting to you? What are those things? Think about the thing that question that I asked at the beginning. Do you kind of like rewatch favorite movies or take long baths? Like all these kind of just comforting things. What are your comforting things? How about laughing? How often are you laughing? If you're not laughing very much, that could be a little red flag. Okay, the next dimension we're going to look at is social self-care, right? We're social beings, even if we're introverts. There's that misnomer that says that if you're an introvert, you only want to be alone. That's not true. You just need to be alone to recharge. You still need people, right? We still need each other. There's this whole part of our brain. It's the limbic part of our brain where a lot of our emotions are housed. That's also the part of our brain that needs to connect with other people. We need healthy connections. If we don't have those healthy connections, our mental health will decline. So let's see what some questions that we can think about. Do you spend time with people that you like? Do you call or write to friends or family who are far away? Maintain some of those connections. Do you actually have opportunities to have stimulating conversations? Do you have opportunities to meet new people? And I know sometimes with COVID, that could be a trick. I've heard of actually a lot of people that have been making connections via certain Facebook platforms, like special groups that are specific to your interests or your needs. Do you spend time alone with your romantic partner? So if you have children, do you make sure that you also just have time for just the two of you? Because if not, that's got to be a priority. Asking others for help when needed. That's a hard one sometimes for some people. Do you do enjoyable activities with other people? These are all ideas, all thoughts that, oh, maybe I'll try that. How about this one? How about, is it hard for you to say no sometimes? I know for me, I want to help everybody. I want to do all the things. But when you say, sometimes when you're saying yes, you're actually saying no to something else. So when you say no, what you're doing is you're saying yes to something else. And that can be very good for your mental health, to be able to set those boundaries and choose the things that are going to feed you and others, right? Okay. And let's see, I think this is our last dimension. This is our spiritual self-care. We all have this dimension. Okay. And it's going to look different in different people. And it could mean, it just is going to have a lot of different meanings for a lot of different people. Some ideas for this area are, do you spend time in nature? Do you have moments where you're just in awe of things that are outside of like the stars, like the picture on your screen? That sense of awe and wonder. Do you take time to just breathe or meditate or pray or recognize the things that actually give meaning to your life? How about acting in accordance with your morals and values? There's been studies that show that when, we don't even have to talk about what those values or morals are. Whatever happens to be inside of you as your own morals and values, if you go against them, you're going to have stress response, because there's this like disconnect. So for self-care, acting in ways, like if you tell somebody a lie, sometimes you're like, right? So kind of being aware, if there's something in your life that is just not, it's not right, it's not sitting well, maybe see what you can do in that area. Setting aside time for thoughts and reflections and journaling and things like that. Participating in a cause that's important. Appreciating art that's impactful, like music, film, literature, all sorts of things like that. And there's so much more that we could, put in this spiritual self-care. Some people really love to connect with other people that are on similar paths. You can find that through places of worship, and lots of other ways. Music, for me, for example, is a form of spiritual self-care. All right, let's move on. So here's a quote from the Dalai Lama. He says, if you feel burnout setting in, If you feel demoralized and exhausted, it is best for the sake of everyone to withdraw and restore yourself. So it is best for everyone. There's so many times in our lives where we're like, no, we cannot withdraw. Like there's too much that needs to be done. But the truth is, if you were to just take a pause and just withdraw, restore, when you come back, those things are still going to be there, but you're going to have a lot more reserves to be able to handle them in a different way and bring really positive energy instead of, I think you know what I mean. Here's another quote. And this comes from a doctor, Dr. Manisha Singhal, who she's an internal medicine physician, and she's been on the front lines of the COVID battle for a while. And she does this. She says, I make it a point to practice self-care. In fact, I make an appointment with myself. Like she values herself enough to actually put it in the book, put it on the calendar. And she's like, this is my time. And it's just as important as any other appointment on that calendar. I love that she says that. Here's a cute little worksheet that you can do. So you could just take a little screenshot if you want. And what I have people do with this is kind of look through it. And what they usually do is I'll give them a piece of paper of this. So you won't have that. So you can try this a different way. But the way that with the paper, what we do is we circle everything that you already do. Okay. And then I add anything that you do that's not on here that helps you. And circle those, right? You want to add to it. Then you're going to mark the ones that you don't do, but maybe you'd like to, or you're open to. And then you can add, of course, you can add to that list. If there's something that you don't do, but you've been wanting to try for a while, write it down. And then what you do is you go through the ones that are marked that you don't do and pick one, just one, and try to incorporate it and see how it goes. And so that's how some people use this list. It can be really helpful. So this comes from Brene Brown. She's got a big fan base. She has a lot to say about vulnerability and leadership and self-care and all those things. She's got a lot of really great studies to back a lot of these things up. And this is what she says. She says, no matter what gets done or how much is left undone, I am enough. It's going to bed at night thinking, yes, I am imperfect and vulnerable and sometimes afraid. But that doesn't change the truth that I am also brave and worthy of love and belonging. Now, I bring this quote up because a really huge part of self-care is our own self-talk. Like, yeah, maybe you can't afford to go get your nails done or go to some kind of retreat or go buy a motorcycle. I don't know, all these things that you might think are forms of self-care. Maybe you can't afford these bigger, loftier things, but you can put a flashlight on the way that you treat yourself. And that is one of the hugest, most effective forms of self-care. So there's another I guess therapist that's famous for her work with self-compassion. Her name is it Christine Neff, I think. Let me see here. Yeah, Kristen Neff. And the reason I bring this up is because she has a website. You can look it up. It's selfcompassion.org. And I believe it looks like it's self-compassion.org. And that's her website. And the reason why I'm pointing this out is because she has some free resources on there. So if you were to go to kind of explore her website, there's a place where it'll actually say, I can't remember exactly, it'll say categories or resources, free. And she's got a whole bunch of these free exercises or even recordings of like guided meditations and things like that, that kind of help you on your road to being more self-compassionate. And when we learn how to be self-compassionate for ourselves, we're going to be better able to be compassionate towards others, especially our children. So this is why it's so important for us to do it for ourselves first. Get that oxygen on. Self-compassion is like oxygen first, and then you can give it to your kiddos. And so I'm going to just show you a couple of the guided meditations she has, or not guided, a couple of the exercises she has listed on her website. Here's an example of a couple. Exercise number 1 is just this simple. This is so simple, but it's such a great tool. It's just to ask yourself, is this how I would treat a dear friend? And if the answer is no, take a deep breath and try again and see if you can talk to yourself in a different way. Here's another exercise. Exercise number 4 is just supportive touch. She has this whole thing where she'll have you put, I can't remember exactly what it was, but she kind of guides you and just kind of holding yourself. Sometimes just feeling yourself, it kind of is really grounding. It can be really helpful. You can see that. All right, here's a few more just little easy things that you can incorporate that are just super easy, and yet there's studies that back how useful they are and how effective they are. So studies, I think we probably all know and agree that if you're just out in nature, it does lower your stress response unless it's a stressful thing going on in nature. But if you're like going on a beautiful hike and just being in nature and smelling the fresh air and the plants, it can really help you with you, getting you back to baseline. What's interesting is there's other studies that show just looking at nature can have a similar effect. Isn't that crazy? So I have an office where I don't have like a real window. So I put up a picture of a window. It's very beautiful. There's green and there's water. And man, I look at that and I'm like, oh. And so, yeah, that's really interesting study. So here's some examples you can do. So if you wanted to go find some really high quality pictures that you can just download and do whatever you want with, you can go to places like unsplash.com. It's an amazing website. Let me tell you, if you haven't heard of it, the picture that you're looking at with the ferns right now, that comes from Unsplash. They have thousands of free, royalty-free photos that you can just download. It can be your screensaver. You can download it onto your phone. You can print it. I have actually a few that I've sent to the printer and to make into posters, and I just have them in strategic places in my home. And it's really amazing how just looking at it can really calm you down. You can try real or artificial plants. You can try YouTube. You know, you can literally just like do a search on YouTube for like nature videos or nature sounds, and there's so many. I have a few that I use for my cat. And I pick the ones that I like the sounds, like the birds, and my cat likes them. Believe it or not, she'll watch it. It's really funny. But the sounds, like walking into my home and hearing those birds, like, these are all little teeny things to help your stress response. Other people respond really well to aromatherapy. Okay, you can diffuse it in your room or your car. Sometimes you can put it just right inside of your clothing and smell it. I've been putting it inside of my mask, put it right in my mask, and then it becomes therapeutic mask. So those are some ideas. And then here's a few more ideas. Just self-massage. You know, it's really interesting. I know this might sound funny, but try it. We hold a lot of tension in our stomach. So if you just lay down and just like massage your stomach for like even a minute, you just try it. Just try it. See, and you'll go, Beni, I can see what you're talking about now. Trust me. Hold a lot of stress there. Just spending time with your animals. can be very therapeutic, and there are definitely studies on that. Breathing, meditation, mindfulness practices. Schedule a date or a call with a good friend. I don't have much time to talk too much about this, but if you're interested, you can look it up. But I had a little monitor to monitor my heart rate variability, which really shows how you are doing with your stress response, right? And I wasn't doing so good. And so I was doing all kinds of things, right? I was trying to do like meditations and different things, and it really wasn't budging my heart rate variability. So I had just taken a measurement, and my friend called, and she doesn't live in town, and I'm not much of a phone call person, but man, it was good to hear from her. And we talked for about 2 hours, and that's not normally what I do. So then I hung up the phone and I took my heart rate variability to just see where it was at, and it was exactly where I wanted it to be. And it was that powerful, right? Having some time to just connect with a friend was the only thing that actually instantly helped me with my stress response. So what is it for you? Is it a friend? Like, sometimes it's things that we think are frivolous or we don't like, but we engage in these things, and what is it for you? The last little tool is something called reframing. Okay, so just like self-compassion and self-talk is an easy form. It's not easy. It's a simple form of self-care that we can work on, and it's free, and it's something we can do. Reframing is another one of those things that's free, and it's something that we can do. And there is a website for it. So got to give you lots of resources. So it's a really interesting website. So what you do is you would go to reframe dot the word think without the I, so THNK .org. And it's going to take you to this page, right? And it's the art of thinking differently. So what you would do here is, if you have something that's going on in your life that you're kind of having a hard time with, this simple tool will kind of help you maybe reframe it a little bit. It is a powerful tool, let me tell you. So what you would do is you would click on that button that says reframe now, and it will walk you through a very, very simple process. And at the very end, you're going to have this a different way of looking at that situation. Okay, it might not give you a bunch of answers, but it will help you think about things in a different way. And so I highly, if that sounds interesting to you, I encourage you to check it out. So so self-care is not just doing activities, right? It's also choosing to stick up for yourself and your needs. We all have them. We can't put them on the back burner. Sometimes it feels like we have to. We can't do that for too long, right? So it's something that as we practice it, the better we're going to get at it. And the better your children will be able to grow to care for themselves, because the way that you model self-care is going to be the most powerful form of teaching them their own self-care. So if you don't want to do it for yourself, but I want you to do it for yourself, to do it for your kids. Because they're going to just learn by watching you. And because you will have the reserves to better care for them. So that's what we have for you today. My hope is that we gave you lots of little tiny doable things that might be able to help you in your self-care journey. Now, we all know that sometimes we need more than that. Sometimes we need some professional help in the form of therapy, in the form of medicine, and that's important too. That's an important part of our self-care too. So our friends over at Resilient Arizona, they have this amazing resource that's available to all of us. Basically, you just call 211 and you can get connected. We can connect you with some free resources that might be able to help you. So please take advantage of that. So thank you so much for attending today's presentation. We're just so glad that you decided to join us. And yeah, and if you want to reach out again, my email is b like boy dot Garcia, Garcia at polarahealth.com. And we'd love to hear from you. All right, have a wonderful day and be nice to you.